Hey, what's going on, guys? Mcskillet here with another CSGO video, and today I'm going to be making the ultimate Doppler guide for CSGO because we got the Chroma knife finishes again in the Chroma 3 case, so I thought this would only be appropriate. And of course, there's plenty of videos on YouTube of people showing off the Doppler knives, but this video is not about just showing off the knives. In this video, I actually want to talk about the rarities of each phase, the prices of each phase, the different colors, and variations on the different phases on the Doppler knives, because there's actually a lot that has to do with the Doppler knives. And even if you've been trading a while, you may learn something new from this video, because I'm going to be trying to go over everything that could potentially help you out if you're ever trading Dopplers, or it's also just helpful to know a lot of this stuff because you will definitely be in the advantage when looking for certain items. And also real quick, the CSGO Wild guys are hosting an insane giveaway right now. Free to enter. All you have to do is retweet the tweet and follow them, I believe. Link in the description. They're actually giving away full sets of the Sapphire and Ruby knives, so make sure to check that out. It's actually pretty relevant to this video. I didn't even plan on that, so you can make sure to check that out in the description. So the first part of the video is going to be identifying the different phases. I'm going to showcase all 7 of the in-game inspects of the different phases, and then I'm going to show you a foolproof way to tell the difference between all of them so you don't get the phases mixed up, and that can sometimes be pretty helpful, especially on the black pearls. So let's get into this. So right here we have phase 1, and for right now I'm just going to be showcasing what it looks like. I'm not going to be talking about the price and rarity yet. That's going to be in part 2 and part 3, but this is what phase 1 looks like. It's pretty much the same on all the knives. I did all the showcases here on the M9s, and I'll show how to tell the difference on the Karambits as well as the M9s after I showcase all the inspects. So this is phase 1, got a bit of pink on it. And right here is phase 2, which is similar to phase 1, except it's a lot pinker. With phase 2, you can actually get on some knives that are completely pink, and those are pretty cool. Looking on the M9, the M9 is pretty much the knife that stretches the pattern the most, so you cannot get a fully pink phase 2 M9 Doppler, but you can get it on a lot of the other knives. So next up we have phase 3, which is kind of like phase 1 except for blue. As you can see right here, it's mainly black with a little bit of blue, and there's also some other colors that can mainly be seen when it's in the sun, such as orange and green. And having orange and green doesn't make yours any more special than a normal one. It's actually quite common to have some orange and green on a lot of times the backside, sometimes even the play side. But next up we've got phase 4, and this one is actually kind of like phase 2 except with blue. So it's got a ton more blue on it than the phase 3 one. So yeah, some people try to get fake sapphires, and you cannot get that on the M9 because there's always going to be a big black gap on it. But on a Karambit, you can get some that are pretty blue, not really the same thing as a sapphire because it's always going to have a bit of black, but you can get ones that are very blue for this phase. Next up we have the Ruby, and obviously the Ruby is 100% red. There isn't going to be any black spots on your Ruby. The entire thing is going to be the red color, so it's not too hard to get this one mixed up. Some people get it mixed up with the phase 2 because there are some knives that are extremely pink, but obviously for the Ruby it's red, not pink, so shouldn't be too hard to tell the difference there. This is obviously an M9 Ruby. And next up we got the M9 Sapphire. Some people can get this mixed up with the phase 4, but obviously if there's any black on it at all, it is not a sapphire. And as you can see, this one basically no black at all besides little shadows, but everything is completely blue on the Sapphire, and you cannot get that with any other phase like that. And now we hit the Black Pearl, which is probably the most difficult one to tell. It really isn't that hard once you've inspected a lot of them, but I'll be showing the best way to actually tell all these knives apart in a second, because the best way to tell the knives apart is actually not to inspect them, but rather to look at the item icon. And on the Black Pearl, there's a lot of interesting highlights you can get on it. Mainly, you can actually get little yellow highlights, which is kind of cool. Like this knife right here, it's got yellow and also has pink highlights. It looks kind of like a fade knife, but it only really shows up in the sun, so this isn't some sort of crazy pattern that some people do pay extra for these, but this is what it looks like when it's not in the sun, so don't get too crazy excited about that Black Pearl pattern. So to tell the difference between the Dopplers, you want to be looking at the item icon. Do not try to inspect it in game to determine what phase it is. The best way is to make sure you just take a look at the item icon, and I'll show you what all the different phases look like in a second. And an even easier way than trying to look at the icon to figure out what it is to actually use the Steam Inventory Helper add-on. If you are able to use Google Chrome and sign into Steam on Google Chrome, all you have to do is have that add-on, and you can click on any Doppler knife and it will tell you exactly what phase it is. So right here I clicked on the sapphire, it shows us a sapphire. Also very helpful on the black pearls. It's not really as useful for the sapphires because it's a bit obvious on these. But I've actually made a little guide on every single one of the 5 knives where you can get Doppler finishes on for what all the different phases look like. So right here is the M9. And again, you just want to look at the icon. The icon will always be the same on the different phases. And for the Karambits, you can definitely get mixed up on the Black Pearl and the Phase 1 sometimes. So make sure you're looking for that little red corner, or just look it up on CSGO.exchange or Steam Inventory Helper if you want to be sure to like double check on the right phase. And flip knife, pretty straightforward. You can just look at the guide right there. And yeah, especially easy to tell the Black Pearl for flips. And for gut knives, it's a little bit more tricky. For Phase 1 and Phase 2, you have to remember which side it's on. But again, all the guides are on screen right now, or you can always just use some internet extension to figure out what it is automatically. Here it is for the bayonet, and if you look closely on the Phase 3 and the Phase 4, there is a difference. The Phase 4 has blue on the tip, and Phase 3 doesn't, so that's how you can tell those two apart. So now we're on part 2, which is all about rarity. Alright, so these are some estimations I've made on how rare each one of the knives are based on results from the CSGO.exchange database. I believe the Sapphire and Black Pearl should be a slightly lower percentage, but it was pretty close to 10% and 1%, and it seems like the Black Pearls are almost always around 10 times rarer than the Sapphire and the Ruby. So you only have a 1% chance to get a Black Pearl, you have a 10% chance to get a Ruby or a Sapphire, and you have an 89% chance to get one of the 4 phases right there. And actually, the numbers I saw show that the Sapphire and Black Pearl are even lower than 10 and 1%, but I thought this was a pretty clean and easy way to display it right here. So yeah, a Black Pearl knife there's such a low chance of you getting one of those. For around every 100 Dopplers, there's only 1 Black Pearl. And also taken to consideration that a stat track knife is 10 times rarer than a normal knife. So that means for every 1,000 different every 1,000 Dopplers, there's only going to be 1 stat track Black Pearl. So stat track Black Pearls are one of the rarest knives in the game for sure. Also, it's worth noting that your Doppler knives are going to be factory new pretty much every single time, but there's a very, very, very small percent chance that you can get a minimal wear one, and it's not like a minimal wear one is worth any extra. If it's a stat track Black Pearl minimal wear, that is just beyond rare of rare. I think someone got to flip one of those, but not too many collectors actually want minimal wear knives. Pretty much any collector just wants factory new. So it kind of sucks if you get a minimal wear Doppler. You have to get like extremely unlucky, because normally you should get a factory new one, but you could potentially get a minimal wear one. You cannot get field tested, well worn, or battle scored, only factory new, with a very, very little chance of getting a minimal wear one. Now the third and final part is going to be on prices and exceptions, which could potentially make your knife be worth more than the market or standard price. So here are the general rankings in price for the different Doppler phases, and of course there are exceptions, which I'll try to go over right after I'm done with this part. But Sapphire is generally the most valuable, followed by Ruby, then Black Pearl, which is kind of interesting because I guess Sapphire, Ruby, a lot more people want those than the Black Pearl, even though the Black Pearl is much rarer. But then the Phase 2 one, because it has a bunch of pink, those usually sell for a decent amount more than the other 3 phases. And on the Karambit, it can make like up to a $100 difference between a Phase 2 and like the bottom tier Doppler. But either way, Phase 2 a little more expensive than the other 3, and Phase 4 is slightly more expensive than Phase 3 and Phase 1. Also kind of depends on the knife and the amount of blue that it has on it. I'll be talking about that a little bit more in a second. But Phase 1 and Phase 3 are pretty much the bottom 2 patterns, and people do not usually pay more for those 2 patterns, and they are usually worth the least amount and are pretty much market price. So if you have a phase 1 or a phase 3, especially for like an M9, for the M9 I don't even think there's any exceptions except if you had an insanely low float. Also for stat track knives, there is a small change, which is the black pearl is more valuable when it's stat track than a stat track sapphire or a stat track ruby. That's because when we're talking stat track black pearls, we're talking about knives which there's only like around 5 or 6 for each of the knives, even less for some of them. So stat track black pearl is one of the rarest knives in the game and should pretty much always be worth more than a stat track sapphire or a stat track ruby. Maybe on the gut knife it's actually still cheaper just because there's such a little demand for that knife, but for pretty much like an M9 or a Karambit, stat track M9 black pearls, those are worth a lot more than a stat track M9 sapphire. The best way to check your current price and keys for an item is to search it on Reddit Global Offensive Trade, then just put it on this week and you should be able to find other people that are trading your Doppler phase. So just kind of examine the prices on there, see what people are offering for it, and see what people are selling them for. I'm not going to tell you guys exact prices for everything because obviously they're always changing, so there isn't like a set price. You can also look on OP Skins, so with OP Skins and Reddit, you should be able to determine the value of your knife pretty easily. But of course, there are some things to take into consideration, such as the corner. If it's a Karambit, depending on how clean your corner is, it could make a huge difference on the price. People will pay a lot more for very clean knives, and float value, the lower the float, the more value it has. It may not make that big of a difference on like the worst 2 phases though, but for the other phases like sapphires, people really want low float sapphires, so make sure you're paying attention to the float as well as the corner if it's a Karambit when determining the price of your skin. So for the Karambit phase 4 and pretty much any of the phase 4 knives, not as big of a deal on the M9 because it's already so spread out apart, but on the Karambit, it can make a big price difference if you have a lot of blue. Like this one right here has a ton of blue on it for the phase 4. Still has some black, obviously not a sapphire. Some people like to call these knives fake sapphires. I don't really like the fake terms. I think it's either one phase or it's not. But there are people that will pay a good amount extra for like completely blue, or not completely blue, but almost completely blue, still a good amount of black because it's not a sapphire. It's only a phase 4, but people will pay extra for knives like these. But don't expect anything too crazy. I've seen people try to sell these for like 250 keys for one of the best ones out there. It depends on the float, and I think that was from a couple months ago. Not sure if the prices have changed too much, but prices are always changing, so make sure to check on Reddit. And people also will pay a little bit extra for these fully black Karambits. It's not as much as the completely, or not completely, but almost completely blue ones. This is a phase 1 Karambit that is extremely black. It's actually more black than most black pearls when you have these completely dark black ones. It's kind of cool looking and some people will pay extra, but for these I know people are very particular on the corner. People want ones that, if you have one of these that has like a flawless corner for a Karambit, you can definitely expect like a good 200 keys at the moment, I believe. But if it has a scratched corner, I'm not sure how many people will be interested. But these sorts of knives can kind of get a little bit of overpay, but it really depends, and you'll have to find the specific buyer for them. And for the phase 2s, there is a different amount of pink you can get on them. This one right here, I believe, is a max pink. The playset is on the left side, so that's extremely pink. And if you got pink extending throughout the entire thing, people will overpay for that a really decent amount. I'm not sure how much it is compared to like a normal one of these. I don't believe it's too hard to get one that's completely pink because there's a ton of pink on this particular phase, but sometimes you might get a little screwed, not have pink on it. On the M9, not as big of a difference because it's so spread out, but be on the lookout for that as well. And the final thing that I see people occasionally pay extra for, this is a little bit of a smaller market, but this is a really cool knife. And if you find the right buyer, you can maybe get a little bit of overpay. But people do want these Doppler bayonet phase 3s that have a ton of green on them. This is the most green one I've ever seen in this screenshot. Pretty crazy, but you can get a decent amount of green on your Doppler, and some people might be able to overpay for it, but it's kind of a small market. And that's pretty much it for this video, guys. If you know any other particular Doppler patterns, those are the main ones that I know of that people like to pay a little bit more for. But I hope this video helped you guys out, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Try to take a look at those, but that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm Mcskillet, and I'm out.